So many times, if you're a parent, if you work with kids in any level, from elementary to high school to college level, whether they're members of your family or they're your grandchildren, or maybe you volunteer at church, you know that today, perhaps more than any other generation, this generation struggles with anxiety. My name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina. My guest today is one of the founding podcasters of this podcast, Pastor Ben Rudolph, who is now the director of Lake Ann Camp just outside of Traverse City, Michigan. And if you've ever listened to any of our old podcasts, you probably heard Pastor Ben. But beyond being a great pastor and being a great camp director, he's a therapist. He's got a degree in counseling. He understands these issues, and now he's applying what he's learned through pastoral experience and through the classroom in a real life situation as he works with Generation Alpha, Generation Z. These are the young people of today. Ben, man, I can't tell you how good it is to have you back in your chair.
Here. Love
it's
it.
Like the world has now returned to normalcy for me. But anxiety, I know you've seen it from various chairs, so to speak. But tell us what it looks like in a kid's life today. What does anxiety look like?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is their problems feel bigger than their solution. Their solution box is. So there's things that are going on in their life that they don't have answers for, or they don't have solutions for, and therefore they start carrying this burden, this weight, and their world begins to shrink. So I think anxiety is, first of all, we have to acknowledge anxiety or worry has always been around. The Bible speaks of it. Jesus spoke of it. Peter speaks of it. Paul speaks of it. The reality is anxiety or anxious feelings or worry, whatever you want to call it, is part of the human experience. Okay, so it's not like, oh my goodness, there's this new problem that the young people have. But what we are seeing is a fragility in almost like they're not able to understand how to process their anxiety in ways that are healthy. And so that to me is what we're seeing right now. And there's been books written on this, the anxious generation. And there's a lot of good information about that. But there are some unique realities that are making anxiety worse today than it has been in the past. And so I think those are all things that we need to be aware of, and there are steps we can take to help our young people to move beyond it. And I don't think parents should feel like, oh my goodness, this is going to be debilitating and forever problem with my kid. Like one of my foundational beliefs in life is there is a solution to every problem. And if you just heard me say that out loud. There is a solution to every problem. I think that is so fundamental to our human experience. And God is wanting to give us these solutions. So it's not just one of the things that, and you've heard me say this, Dan, I love the science of psychology. I reject the philosophy of psychology. When I was going and getting my degree in counseling psychology, I remember reading this. I was in my diagnosis class, and one of the things they always tell you when you're in a diagnosis class is you think everyone's crazy because you're reading the DSM and you're reading all these things, and you're just thinking everyone's got a mental disorder, And the reality is we're all screwed up at some level. Right. And you could probably, Dan, you and I could probably find some disorders that you and I both have. Let's just open up the DSM and just figure out, oh yeah, I've got that and I've got that. I mean, you could probably find some things that you could classify as having some kind of disorder. But the reality is that going through that class, I realized something. The humanistic, materialistic, major philosophical approach to diagnosis in the psychology world is you have this. This is stuck to you. Therefore, you just have to cope with it and manage the symptoms, and hopefully you can minimize the symptoms. But this is who you are. And I fundamentally based on my reading and of the Word of God, that we are not the diagnosis that people give to us. We're not our own.
This isn't our identity.
This is not our identity. You've got to separate the problem from the person. And one of the biggest problems that young people talk about is my anxiety, my anxiety, my anxiety. Stop talking like it's yours. I struggle with anxious feelings is different than I am anxious. Because there's times when I worry, but that's not who I am. One of the biggest fundamental problems that how we discuss and talk about these problems is it's like it's a part of who we are. I can't imagine not being anxious. That's just who I am. Well, you're thinking about it wrong. You've got to separate the problem from the person and understand your feelings of anxiousness is not who you are. So separate them and understand them and diagnose them and investigate them. But we've got to learn how to shrink the problem into something that is I'm holding, as opposed to I'm swimming in it. It's the difference between me holding a box and saying, in this box is a problem that I have, and I got to figure out how to solve the solution, to I'm swimming in an ocean and it's overwhelming me. Both of those, it's a difference of mentality. It's how I'm looking at the problem. And so that's what I think most people have to do when they're having something that's we consider a mental health issue. You've got to learn how to look at it in a way that I think is biblically correct, but also is you're not being identified with that issue.
You're more than your anxiety.
You are more than your feelings of anxiousness.
Let's back up a couple of steps before we tackle that. And you said something earlier that kind of mentioned you basically the unusual predominance of people feeling anxiousness. And what are some things that you think are unique to this period in human history that may be promoting, or I hate to use this word because it's so overused, it's cliche, but triggering these feelings of being overwhelmed and anxious in this generation? I mean, some people want to blame social media, the internet, dysfunction of the family, the political atmosphere. Are those contributing factors? Is there something deeper going on?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. There is a direct correlation to the percentage of young people that struggle with anxiety. You can look at 2012 when Facebook really became more mainstream and accessible to young people, and it looks like the graph jackknifes and it just explodes.
Right, so you left out a word there. There's a correlation. Is the correlation between anxiety and screens or social media or the internet?
Social media.
Directly
related to social media. There's a because what social media did was it broadened young people's perspective of. All of a sudden, they were suddenly aware of so many other things.
So is there an element of mass hysteria going on?
Yes, I believe there is.
Really?
I think there's a social contagion for sure that's happening. It's almost like if you don't have anxiety, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, and I see that sometimes with suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we know the research shows us that suicides happen in clusters in high schools.
Yeah.
It's very...
And self-harm does as well. I think all of those are anxiety, self-harm, suicide ideation. Those are mental struggles that are sometimes caught, and what ends up happening. So that's separate than the social media, but I think the social media part really did make young people aware of things like, oh my gosh, I wasn't invited to a party. Why wasn't I invited to that party? Right? Because now all of a sudden they're seeing everything. They're seeing people that, young people that have better home lives, it seems like they have better friends, and all of a sudden it makes them depressed and then anxious. And so, because depression and anxiety really play off of each other. So there's this, all of a sudden, the sudden awareness and self-judgment on themselves that young people are already doing that. It just really put on the 50-pound weights, and can they really lift that in their life?
So what advice would you give to a parent today who's navigating this world that is relatively new, certainly in terms of human history, it's very new, and do you just say to your kid, no social media until you're out of my house? Or are there ways to teach responsible use of social? What does a parent today do?
Well, yeah, number one, I would say hold off on giving them a phone as long as possible. I know I mentioned this at our other podcast, but it was this really weird question we had during one of the days of our counselors, and I asked all the counselors, what age were you when you got a phone? And most of them gave an answer between, I would say, like 12 and 15 is when they first got their first phone. And I asked them, okay, what age would you give a phone to your kids? And I think it was like maybe 75, maybe even more percentage gave a later year than the year that they received one.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting.
I find it really interesting. I also wonder, though, because you know as a parent, and your kids were more than mine, but
Yeah.
I did, there's a huge amount of social pressure on parents to give in.
Yes.
To giving them a phone, giving them internet, but also parents have to assume some responsibilities. It makes your life a little easier when your kids are distracted with something and not doing more with you. So I mean, this is a multifaceted issue for parents as well.
It's a big issue. What I would say is, if you're going to give your kid a device, wait as long as possible. I would say the earliest they should have their own device is 14. Yeah. Earliest 14. That's just my own personal opinion.
So do you have a phone-free policy at like in camp?
No.
So the kids can take and use their phones?
We have tech-free days on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're one of the very few camps that allow phones. We're always reevaluating that policy. A lot of times it's because parents don't want their children to go to camp without having them having access to them.
So it's a parent issue.
It's more of a parent issue than a camper issue for sure.
But more and more schools are now moving toward no phones in school.
Yeah, so we're
always
seeing
a change.
Yeah, we're always figuring out what's the right balance between giving these kids access to their parents access to their child throughout the week, but also again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, tech-free days. No one has their phones. We always put them in a safe place in the cabins, and but there's just some. I forget where I was going with that. I had something really profound to say.
I was saying we were talking about things parents can do to.
Oh, I would say here's what I would say. I would say don't let your kid be on social media until they're 16, and limit it. Now, there's all different kinds of software out there. You can limit, 1 hour a day to social media, whatever it is. Don't let you at 9 o'clock at night, the phone goes in the parent's bedroom. They're done with it. Like there's just some guidelines and boundaries you can put on saying, okay, we'll give them some access to this, but we're going to talk about it. So, okay, you're on social media now. What are the feelings you're having? What are the emotions you're having? It's like none of us would give our kids a keys to the car and say, all right, I hope you don't kill anyone. We'd never hand over a gun to our 16-year-old and say, hey, just be careful with that, would you?
Yep.
And walk away. No response. And yet what I would say is that social media and a phone can be more damaging emotionally and spiritually to a young person than keys to a car or handing them a firearm. Yet we just kind of like, no, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is not good. That's not safe.
Yeah, and I think it's important kind of here to say this to the parents is, at some level, your kids are going to think you're the meanest parent in the world. If your kids have never said that to you, then I don't think you're a very good parent, quite frankly. But so choose your level of mean. Choose the hard things. You say, well, it's really hard to tell my kid they can't have a phone when all their other friends are. You know what else is a hard thing? It's whenever your kid is tempted to attempt suicide or is engaged in an online relationship of which you're completely unaware that leads to a great tragedy. Both things are hard, so choose your hard.
Choose your hard. And here's the reality: they probably have devices now that only text. You can lock things down in a certain way that you only allow texting from certain friends. But what I would say is your children do not need the access to the world the way, our counselors would tell us they had a harder time enforcing dress code with the junior campers than they did with the senior high campers.
Interesting. Why do they think that's
junior campers are like rising 4th and 5th grade. And they could always point back to the kids, the campers that came that had phones, the campers that came that didn't have phones. because, fourth and fifth grade, there's kind of like that, right on the precipice of parents deciding whether to give them a device or not. But the campers that came that had phones, had access to all the world of the internet, had a lot more issues than the camper. They had lost their innocence. They had lost that childlike understanding of the world, and now they were dealing with all different kinds of problems that you're like, you're 10 years old. Yeah. Why are you struggling with this?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd like to take that and poke some adults in the eye, if I could, for just a moment, gently in love. But, I had a pastor friend in Austin, Texas, pastor of a church of about 13,000 people, who told me, and in fact, you were with me, weren't you? Yeah. He told me about this experiment that he did with the parents in his church. And he had 240 parents that he invited to a meeting on things they were going to do to disciple their children. And among one of those was a real control on devices. That, for instance, you would not have any devices at meals, that you would not have it at a certain time during the day, that you would limit it for a certain number of hours per day. And that everybody in the family had to agree to the same restrictions and limitations. And whenever that was one of the things to which they would agree, there was like a list of 4 or 5 things, but that was a big one, that over half the parents said, I'm out. They were not willing to give up their device. So when we are as much a part of and we can say, well, we're adults, we can handle it. No, you know what, Dad, if you're watching porn and your kid is spending a lot of time on YouTube and won't talk to you or whatever, those are not moral equivalents. All right. They're not. Or simply, if you're not available to engage your kids with conversation, you can have them phone free. But if you're not available because you're scrolling, mindless reels for hours at a time, then that's not going to solve the problem. And we're part of the problem. I believe, if nothing else, in what we're modeling.
Right. No, I agree. So there has to be some level of boundaries. Yeah. So I think
family-wide, a family policy.
The technology piece to the anxiety, there is not just a correlation. I think there's a causation to a large percentage of it. So yes, there's the rise of social media that's influencing all kinds of mental health issues, the use of pornography, which is hitting both young men and young women now, that leads to all kinds of depression, anxiety. You've got the social contagion piece, which is now it's almost like, what do you mean you don't have anxiety? You don't have anxiety? I've got my anxiety. Do you have your anxiety? And so they were just kind of like, oh, wait, I should have anxiety. Wait, I should be anxious about this. And so that's another part of it. But I think the other thing that parents need to, if you're going to help navigate your young person who struggles with feelings of anxiety, I think you need to help them to understand that, hey, we're gonna find a solution for this. Okay, don't freak out. If your kid like freezes up and doesn't, like, I remember my one son, it was soccer tryouts and he was getting all, and we're like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna walk you through, but it's gonna be okay. You be the parent oh, my kid's gotten, and then all of a sudden we got to baby this person, and we don't want to like pressure him. We don't want to. One of the anxiety, OCD issues like obsessive compulsive disorder, which are control based, like I need to control, are very related to anxiety, because it's like I have to control the environment, I have to control the situations around me. What I've learned about OCD, and I've got OCD tendencies, so I'm talking about someone with experience. The more you scratch that itch, it's like poison ivy. The more the more that you baby the anxiety, like, oh, you don't want to like push against it. I don't want to challenge it. It continues to grow. So all of a sudden I'm anxious about my tests. Now I'm anxious to go to school. Now I'm anxious to go to band practice. Now I'm anxious to, and if you constantly are taking like, okay, and you're letting up and almost like treating it with these children with fragileness of being saying, you know what, you're going to be okay. Let's walk through this. We're not going to let this control your life. Okay. It will spread. Anxiety spreads if you keep honoring it. Stop honoring anxiety and just say, okay, we're going to work through this, and there's a path forward of the confidence that you need and overcoming the fear and the worry that you're feeling right now. But God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So what do we need to understand about the power of God right now? What do we understand about love? because perfect love casts out fear. And what's the sound mind? Well, how do we need to be thinking about this? You're obviously, the narrative that's running in your brain about this issue is not the correct narrative. So let's reframe our thinking on this issue and let's figure it out. There's all different kinds of things you can do. Like another simple thing would be to ask a scaling question. Okay, so you're feeling anxious right now. Again, look how I framed the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say, so your anxiety. I just said, you're feeling anxious. On a scale of 1 to 10, tell me what the level of anxious feelings you have right now. Probably a 4. Okay. 10 would be you're freaking out. 1 would be, I'm not really feeling anything at all. If you're feeling a 4 right now, what do you think we could do right now to help you feel a 3? Oh, I probably would do this. Help them to take baby steps and say, let's do this together. You're not alone in this, okay? And let's figure out some steps we can take to minimize your anxious feelings. So scaling questions are great because what scaling questions do is they help you with a starting point. Okay, we're right here, but how do we want to move in the right direction to take the baby steps we need to make? So scaling questions are really excellent in helping you to figure out the steps. I use scaling questions. There's a kind of theory in the mental health world. It's called solution-focused therapy. A lot of great tools that solution-focused therapy has. For example, if I was to sit with a young person who had struggled with anxiety in their life, I said, well, tell me some places in your life where you don't feel anxious. Well, I don't feel anxious doing this. Why don't you feel anxious there? What is it about that environment or those people that give you have a sense of confidence? Well, because what you're trying to do is finding the thing that contradicts what they're feeling. If I feel confident in this area or this reason in my life, and I feel confident because of this, what did we learn about that experience of confidence that you can apply here? So we're trying to find the solution through the answers for their problem are living it out. They just have to discover it. So some things like that you can just practically do to help your young person to just take those baby steps. Not everyone's going to take their kid to a therapist. Obviously, depends on how severe it is, but find someone who's cognitive behavioral therapist. Find someone who's solution focused in nature. Find someone who's a believer. You want the Christian worldview because you don't want them to have that humanistic philosophy embedded in them. So those are all things I would say, look at those as ways to move forward.
Yeah. 2 quick things I just wanted to kind of contribute is one of the things that I see as contributing to anxiety in families and children, but families in general, is overstimulation. And overstimulation means overscheduling, overcommitment. Our kids' lives are so busy right now, and everything is almost shouting at them. I mean, their music is loud and intense a lot of times. They like that. And to make it even more loud and intense, they put headphones on or earbuds in.
Yeah.
We've got them enrolled in, a different sport every season, plus the ones at school, plus the travel teams on the weekends. Plus they got to have homework because they're going to need to get a scholarship. And so we're pounding our kids with overstimulation, pressure, hurry, we're going to be late. Why is your room messy?
Yes.
And that causes anxiety just talking about it to me.
Yeah.
And living under that when you're 10, 12, 14, 15 years old ought to be just cruel. The other thing that I have to rely on this is a gift that I got by growing up in a Christian home. And I think a lot of parents don't tap in to the calming effect of foundational truths, which is Scripture.
Yeah.
I mean, I counted 4 or 5 different passages that you quoted over the last 22 minutes. Be anxious for nothing.
Cast your cares upon him, for he cares for you.
All of these passages of Scripture, take every thought into captivity.
Yep.
All of these different ideas come with it becomes that root that we can tap into to be able to give us the moment of, I'm going to take my breath. This is what is really real. I'm going to reflect on this. I'm going to use it to rebalance. And to me, speaking, I love the scaling questions and so forth, but that would bring me from a 4 to a 2 real fast.
Yes.
To be able to just remember what is really real.
There's really some very practical things. One of the things I would teach the young people I would counsel on anxiety, to say something over and over again. God sees me, God knows me, God cares for me. And I teach them the scriptures that we would draw those truths from. And when they're able to reframe their thinking about the right truths that I need to be thinking about, as opposed to, because the thing you're trying to do is shrink the problem. There's something that feels so overwhelming to them, it's giving them cause for worry. You want to keep shrinking it. And the best way to shrink the problem is to keep your eyes fixed on the all-powerful, almighty, good God. Amen. Who loves you, who died for you, and he loves you and sees you. And so all of a sudden, the more I see God in light of my problem starts shrinking, and I'm able to walk through them.
Awesome. Well, this has been an important episode, and again, one of the best things about Ben is, man, we can just have like an episode that's just full of tomfoolery and fun, and the next thing you know, we're so deep that I wish this conversation could last hours. I know. So, but as always, we appreciate you listening to us at Life Talks. If you have any questions, in fact, some of today's conversation was motivated by someone who's a teacher who said, "Help me navigate my my classroom a little better on this topic." But whatever may cross your mind, if you have questions, want clarifications, or have ideas for future podcasts, please feel free to send those to us at LifeTalks@LifeCharlotte.com. And hopefully you will share us. Leave us a good review. I was reading some of the reviews the other day that encouraged me. So leave us a review if you would on one of the platforms. But we appreciate your listenership, and if you would share us with others, we'd appreciate that as well. And until next time, thanks as always for joining us here at Life Talks.